our next story. Um, so oh, whoops, I am sorry. I just yeah,
No worries.
yeah, you
So
can go ahead.
I want to say something before we actually start talking about the story,
Mm,
right? Um, there is a notion among like creatives and entrepreneurs or just people in general, right? That like when you do something great, and I think this was the woman who wrote the book Eat, Pray, Love. She did a TED talk to where she talked, she spoke about this topic, right? And it's like whenever you do something great, like if you write a movie, if you write a book like Eat, Pray, Love, and you create the movie, then it's great, right? People expect you to like do the next great thing, right? Like J.K. Rowling, for example, she wrote the Harry Potter books, and the Harry Potter movies were a huge success. And then people are like, "Well, J.K. Rowling, like, what is your next great thing? What is your next Harry Potter?" Um, that's not always the case, right? Like just because you do one great thing, it doesn't mean you have to do a second great thing or a third great thing. Like one is kind of enough sometimes. I mean, think about the people who go through their lives and they like never get a chance to do something like, you know, great and large to that magnitude where billions of people across the planet love it. And that's what Sylvester Stallone was able to do, right? And fortunately for him, he's done a lot of great things. You know, he did Rocky, he did Rambo, right? Both two like iconic roles. He's been able to eat off of this Rocky thing for the better part of like 40 years now, right? And that's and it's still great, right? So the next story that we're going to talk about here is this Rocky documentary that has been announced. So when is this project coming out?
I believe it's due out June 9th, is when it's coming out on demand. So let me give you some info here from and this comes to us by way of IndieWire. The upcoming Rocky documentary, narrated by franchise star Sylvester Stallone, premieres on demand on June 9th. 40 years of Rocky. That's what this documentary is entitled. 40 Years of Rocky, The Birth of a Classic, written and produced by Derek Wayne Johnson. Side note, I believe his name is Dwayne Johnson is what he's trying to pull off there. We see what you're doing, Derek Wayne Johnson. Offers a deep dive into the making of the original Rocky film, as Stallone recalls his experiences working on the movie. You can pre-order 40 Years of Rocky, the birth of a classic, on iTunes or Apple TV and Amazon, but it arrives worldwide on June 9th, 2020, to all digital HD platforms. So yeah, man. When I was reading up on this, man, I was actually excited, man, because when I was a kid, and I think we've talked about this on the podcast a number of times. When I was a kid, I used to love Rocky Four, and I still do. Rocky Four was one of the best films I've ever watched, because of nostalgia, right? When I think back to a kid, just watching him versus Ivan Drago, yeah, yada yada, and I think that's pretty much like the first Rocky film that I actually did watch from like beginning to end, right? It wasn't until I got older, and I think I did watch like Rocky One when I was a kid, but it looked all old and just like boring kind of. It
Wasn't
didn't
as
have any.
sexy.
Yeah, the training montage wasn't necessarily as good as like Sylvester Stallone out in the snow in Rocky Four and fucking all the shit that he did in Rocky Four. But as an adult, when I went back to watch the first Rocky, I was so fucking blown away at how intimate the story is, the normal shit that he goes through, and the whole scenario, right? Like I remember one of the most jarring scenes that I've ever watched in any film ever was a scene from Rocky where he's walking with there's this like little girl in the neighborhood that he sees, she's hanging out with all these dudes, right?
What's her little Marie, little something
Yeah,
Marie?
something like Marie or something like that.
Yeah.
And so he walks her home and he's like, "Hey, like, look, don't hang out with these guys. People might think weird of you, or he's just and like for whatever you might think of his advice, he's just trying to he's trying to look out for And then at the end of it, she's just listening, listening, listening. Then they get to her stoop, and then he's like, "All right, well, I guess I'll see you later." And she's like, "Hey, Rocky." And he's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Hey, F you, man," or she says something like that. And I just was like, wait, what? My mind was blown. That's such a real thing, to have it so that, like, like that's a relatable thing to like try to give somebody advice and try to give them all this knowledge, and then at the end of it they're like fuck you, like, and you're like all right, I guess. Say that one more time.
No, so it happens every day.
It does, man. So anyways, so I say all that to say, I will love to see how this movie was put together, and if not for any reason, then we get to see inside of the window, because Stallone, he wrote Rocky, and I don't think he directed it. I've been saying that for a long time, but I don't think that's actually true. I think I forget who actually directed Rocky, if not Stallone, but he went through a journey trying to make this film, and he was pretty much down and out when he was coming up with the idea of the film, and trying to get it made. So it'll be so fascinating to see sort of how all that got put together, and to see him and Carl Weathers together, how they sort of plotted things out for all the boxing scenes. It'll be incredible to see this documentary. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the more fascinating things about this, like to your point, the boxing scenes with Carl Weathers, right? One of the things we've learned about this movie over time is that like those scenes were very much real. Like some of the punches that Stallone took were very real punches, because he wanted the realism of like being in a boxing match in this film. Unlike some of the boxing movies that we see today, where like the actors get really buff and physical, or they get like really buff and like they have the physique of a boxer, but they're not taking real punches to the face. Stallone was taking real punches to the face.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'll have to pause you there, because Michael B definitely took a real shot, because it knocked him the fuck out. It's
yeah,
like,
that's the difference. Stallone didn't get dropped. Well, we may see it in this
yeah, he might
documentary.
have.
But yeah, there's so much storytelling going on here. I mean, Stallone was literally broke when he was making this movie, and I think the story is that like when it was released in theaters, he actually hated it. He didn't love it at all. Like he was embarrassed by it. He thought it was going to be a huge flop, and it went on to be one of the greatest movies of all time. Film was inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame. I think Stallone was inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame as well. So there's so much story here. I love Stallone. He's always been like one of my favorite actors. I love Rocky. I love Rambo. I like The Expendables, and everything he's done in between. So definitely gonna be looking out for this when it comes out on VOD. So what is it, June 9th?
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, this is coming out on June 9th, which again I'm pretty excited for. I might even fuck around and fucking pre-order this shit. I never pre-order a goddamn thing. So
But I want to see this for sure.
yeah, no, 100%. I think this is a must watch. And yeah, yeah, I can't wait to see sort of what it all sort of entails. But nonetheless, we persist. So